Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhya Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhya Romancha Kampasu Taranga Bhajo Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Romancha Kampasu Taranga Bhajo Bande Garashi Charanara Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanado Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Neyunjatapi Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Juktasya Bhaktamsa Neyunjatapi Bande Garashi Charanara Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shanga Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shanga Kritaiva Triptin Bhajata Shadeva Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Kritaiva Triptin Bhajata Shadeva Shiradikama Dhavayarapara Madhura Lila Gunarupanamna Shiradikama Dhavayarapara Madhura Lila Pratikshana Sa Dhanalalupasya Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Pratikshana Sa Dhanalalupasya Bande Garashi Charanara Vrindam Ne Kunja Yono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Bhir Juktir Apekshaniya Ne Kunja Yono Tatra Tidaksha Ativala Vasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Tatratidacha Ativalabhasa Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda Sakcha Dharitena Shamasta Shastri Ruktastatha Bhataiva Sadvi Sakcha Dharitena Shastri Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Guru Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Dayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Yasatrin Sandhyam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatadesha Tarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatadesha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Yaraya Nama Krishna, Jadavaya Nama, Yaraya Nama Krishna, Jadavaya Madhavaya, Kesavaya Namaha, Jadavaya Madhavaya. Gopal Govindaram, Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopina, Madana Moham, Giridhari. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda, Shri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava, Bhagavata Gita, Hari Guru Vaishnava, Shri Rupa Sanatan, Bhatta Raguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raguna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Bol. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav Radhe, Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman, Sitaram, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Nitai Gaura Pramanande Haribo. Jaya Vishwapar Paramansa Prabhajakacharya Sutra Shima. ISKCON प्रतिष्ठा विभूति संस्थापक आचार्य वैष्णव शिरोमणि गौर प्रिय जन कृष्ण प्रेम भक्तिदाता पतित पावन अभोचर बिन भक्ति विरंत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद जी की जय। श्री गुरु वर्ग पतित उद्धार की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास गुण सदगुरु स्वामी प्रभु की जय। नाम आचार्य शील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। आनंद कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद श्रीमन गौरांग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावर अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहत मृदंग ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। फेलोशिप श्री श्री राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्रधाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमती सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर्ण सिंगरे भगवान की जय। जय गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। बोलो श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रेमानंदी हरिबो। All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga. Hari Hari. Who's going to sing today?
Namaste Narasimhaya
Narasingaya
Praladaladaine
Praladala Dadaine
Hiranyakashipu Vaksha
Hiranyakashipu Vaksha
Shilatankanakalaye
Jaya Silatanka Kalaye
Ito Nasimha Parato Nasimha
Ito Nishinga Parato Nishinga
Yato yato yami tato nasimha
Jaya Jata Jato Jami Tato Nishinga
Bahe nasimha Hrudaye nasimha
Bhayir Nishinga Hridaye Nishinga
Narasimha madim sharanam prapadye
Nasingamadim Sharanam Prapade
Tavakara kamalavare nakam Adbhuta shringa Dalita hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Tavakara Kamala Bhare Nakam Adabhuta Shinga Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabringa केशवदीता नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे
जय केशवधृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
जय केशवधृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जगदीश हरे
जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव
जय निसिंहदेव जय निसिंहदेव जय निसिंहदेव जय निसिंहदेव
जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद
जय भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रहलाद
नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल
नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल जय श्री भक्ति पद सर्व विघ्नाशना कर सिंह भगवान की जय जय भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय निताय गौर हरि परमानंदे श्री वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादिदेवी शतवताय नमो नमः वृंदायै तुलसी दिव्याय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादिदेवी शतवताय नमो नमः वृंदायै तुलसी दिव्याय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादिदेवी शतवताय नमो नमः जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो अभिलाषी राधा
कृष्ण सेवा पाबो ए अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो हे अभिलाषी
ये तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वांछ पूर्ण हो ये तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वांछ पूर्ण हो कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी मोराये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास मोराये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास नयन है वो सदा युगल रूप राशि नयने हरि सदा युगल रूप राशि ये निवेदन दार सखीर नुगत करो ये निवेदन दार सखीर नुगत करो सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी दीन कृष्ण दासी हो ये न मोरा हो
दीन कृष्ण दास कोई हे मोरा
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमी सदा ये न बासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये न बासी
यानी कानी चापा पानी ब्रह्म हत्याधिकानी चा तानि तानि प्रातश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
जाने काले पापाले ब्रह्महत्यादि कालेशा ताने ताने प्राणासन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रदक्षिणन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
हरे
कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol,
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devyai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to return to service with Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes short of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of carried damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpana Majanam Bhava Mahadavani Vapanam Shri Akarva Chandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratiparam Purnamrita Swadanam Savatmasnam Paramparam Jayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vavudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Nimita Shmarane Nakala Ita Drushi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaiva Krishna Yajaninanurada Vinarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagadishaka Maye Mama Janmane Janmaneshwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahaitu Kitwai Vainandatanu Jakinkaram Patitamam Vishame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Bhadanam Gadu Gadarudaya Gira Pulakari Chitam Bapukada Tavanamagrane Bhavishati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakyusha Prabhusaitam Shunyaitam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virayename Asilishabha Padaratam Pinashtumam Adarshanar Marmahatam Karotuva Jatata Thava Vidadatu Lampatu Matprana Tastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Kam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurate Shinamaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord and strolling the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I am falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on end the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling old, vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if it handles him roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are often Vedas as fruitive activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fatherless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord, They are just our desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone. And they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vancha kalpatarvescha kripa sindhu vyaivacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. So, Mangala Charan, Shri Guru Vandana. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jota Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devim Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shrunavadi Vasatyari Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shiva Shavanavi Devi Daitaya Kripavdai Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Nama Madhur Jojala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtai Rinatarine Rupanuga Virudha Posiddhanta Dvantarine Namagura Kishoraya Sakya Vairagya Murtai Vipralambhara Sambodhe Parabhujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sakchiranandanamini Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Virbhava Bhumiswam Nirdesha Sajana Priya Vaishnava Sarva Bhuma Sri Jaganayate Namo Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo 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 Mahavaranayu Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Nama Panchatattamakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataro Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakti Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratopangor Mama Manda Matergati Ma Sarvasya Parambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpadumadha Shmara Nagara Shingasanastu Shmaradha Shla Govinda Devo Prishtali Vishevamano Shmarami Shmara Sara Sarambi Bamshvada Dadastita Karshan Venu Swamer Gopir Gopinatha Shri Stuna Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusuti Devi Pranamami Haripriye Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Riksha Laksha Britesha Surabhi Rabhipali Antam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Pakoti Kamaniya Vishesa Sobam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Sadvanamal Yavamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakili Kalavilasam Shaman Tribanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayor Ratapi Manaso Manipungamanam Sompyastiyat Paparasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim Yas Chaktirasti Jagadandas Jayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bhistabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pramanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksadeva Hidesu Vilokayante Yam Sham Sundaram Chintel Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menetistan Nanavatar Makaro Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumamyo Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Pavuto Jagadanda Koti Kotiswa Sesi Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahmanishkalam Anantam Sesa Bhutam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunyatad Visaya Vida Vitayamana Sadvavalambi Parasatvam Suda Satvam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Yapranina Pratifilam Smartama Petya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Dijadami Dalechatasya Devi Mahesu Harimadnama Sutes Tesu Tete Prabhavini Chaya Vitarsta Yena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shastista Tipalaya Sadava Sakti Reka Jaya Vyasya Bhuvanani Vibhati Durga Chanarupam Abhyasa Chitesta Tesa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dade Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Naitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasambutam Aputata Sampaitikaya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dipachre Vita Santanam Abhipetya Dipayate Vivita Hetustam Dharma Yastadrike Vihicha Vishnutaya Vibhati Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narvana Jale Bhajati Mitsamo Midramananta Jagadanda Saram Kopa Gadhada Saktam Avalambya Param Samurtim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaikani Svasita Kalamata Avalambya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalabi Seso Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalation and Jesu Teja Swiyam Kiyat Prakatayata Pitadvatata Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidanu Karta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vidaya Kumbadwande Pranamasamayesh Ganadiraja Yatnan Vinantam Alamasit Jagatrayasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Nir Mahiga Ganamambu Maruti Sasya Kalasta Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayan Yasmat Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sagala Grahana Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kalachakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Chutasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kitu Patagava Dehastajiva Yadata Mata Vibhava Bhakita Bhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrinda Gopa Matavendra Mahoswa Karma Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidahati Kintu Chibakti Bhajam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kama Sahaja Pranadi Bhiti Bhatsalya Moha Guru Gaurav Sevi Bhava Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisam Tanamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriyakanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatarva Drumabu Mischitamani Kanama Ito Yamamritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivan Sipriyasa Kichiranandam Yuti Paramapitad Vaswatya Aspichal Sayachashiradi Bishavadi Surabi Vyasta Sumahani Mesar Dakyava Rajitina Hiyatrapi Samaya Bhaje Switati Pam Tamaham Iha Golokam Ityam Vidantas Te Santakshiti Viralachari Katipa Shri Guru Vastika prayers, Kijay. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest where it extinguishes, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. From my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always led by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion with his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves with my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes, Radhika and Madhava, and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different tastes of rages for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Unto the lotus feet. The spiritual master to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord, because the most confidential servant to the Lord, this is acknowledged in all reveals Krishna and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives a benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, verse number 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Uttarayam Jita Puror Vamsa Sadva Bhimanyuna Savaidron Yastra Samplusta Punar Bhagavata Drita Uttarayam unto Uttara Drita conceived Puro of Puru Vamsa descended Sadhu Abhimanyuna by the hero of Abhimanyu. Sa he by certainly Droni Astra by the weapon of Droni, the son of Drona. Samplusta being burnt. Puna again for the second time. Bhagavata by the personality of Godhead. Drita was protected. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The embryo of Puru's descendant, begotten by the great hero Abhimanyu, in the womb of Uttara, his wife, was burnt by the weapon of the son of Drona, but later he was again protected by the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The embryonic body of Parikshit, which was in formation after Uttara's pregnancy by Abhimanyu, the great hero, was burned by the Brahmastra of Asvatthama. But a second body was given by the Lord within the womb, and thus the descendant of Puru was saved. This incident is the direct proof that the body and the living entity, the spiritual spark, are different. When the living entity takes shelter in the womb of a woman through the injection of the semen of a man, there is an emulsification of the man's and woman's discharges, and thus a body is formed the size of a pea, actually with 8 holes, gradually developing into a complete body. But if the developing embryo is destroyed in some way or other, the living entity has to take shelter in another body or in the womb of another woman. The particular living entity who was selected to be the descendant of Maharaj Puru, or the Pandavas, was not an ordinary living entity, and by the superior will of the Lord, he was destined to be the successor to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Therefore, when Asvatthama destroyed the embryo of Maharaja Parikshit, the Lord, by his own internal potency, entered into the womb of Uttara by his plenary portion, just to give audience to the would-be Maharaj Parikshit, who was in great danger. By his appearance within the womb, the Lord encouraged the child and gave him complete protection in a new body by his omnipotency. By his power of omnipresence, he was present both inside and outside of Uttara and other members of the Pandava family. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The embryo of Puru's descendant, begotten by the great hero Abhimanyu in the womb of Uttara, his wife, was burnt by the weapon of the son of Drona, but later he was again protected by the Lord. Srila Prabhupada. Ki Jai. So this is a very interesting history about the descendant of Puru, or actually the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, who was going to succeed Maharaj Yudhisthira as king, and who was able to continue the line of spiritual management. Maharaj Yudhisthira is the par excellent example of bona fide and competent spiritual management of a country, of not only a country, but of the whole universe. And his descendant, Maharaj Parikshit, continued that. Okay, so this is a great story, and it's very significant. It's explained also in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Abhimanyu was killed in the battle of Kurukshetra in an unfair way by Karna and Dushasana and others. And Uttara became a widow, and but she was pregnant. And after the battle of Kurukshetra was just over, in order to, in order to stop the lineage of spiritual management and create havoc, there was an attempt to kill the baby in the womb of Uttara. So we see that the whole idea of abortion or killing a child, a baby or embryo in the womb of a mother, is a demoniac thing, and it should never be considered to be normal. It's very sinful to kill a baby, whether in the womb or at the point of exiting the womb or after. In fact, there was an attempt a couple of years ago to make it legal to kill a baby in the first 10 days of its birth. And they passed a law like that in Virginia, and then it was stopped. And this is how crazy people have become. They're not satisfied with killing the baby within the womb. They wanted to be able to kill the baby at least 10 days, at least during a period of 10 days after the birth. Okay? So this is how perverted and crazy the American, some American people have become to enact a law like this. And the governor of Virginia tried to enact that law. So we see that Maharaj Parikshit was killed in the womb because a brahmastra was thrown at him, and brahmastras are very difficult to stop. But the Lord gave him a new body. And what happened was a very mysterious thing. Krishna was with Kunti Devi, and Uttara was running toward them. And at that time, the brahmastra was almost reaching her. And a brahmastra is like an impossible weapon to stop. Only the person who throws it can stop it, but the person that threw it did not learn how to stop it. So therefore, he was not a bona fide brahmana. And so previous to that, that same person threw a brahmastra to kill Arjuna. At that time, there was a little bit more time, and therefore Krishna explained to Arjuna how to stop the brahmastra. But in this case, with Uttara, there was no time at all. So Krishna actually entered the womb of Uttara, and although the body was destroyed, he gave a new body to Maharaj Parikshit, according to what this purport says. So Kunti Devi witnessed it, and she was absolutely amazed and overwhelmed by it. She actually saw Krishna enter into the womb of Uttara and save Maharaj Parikshit. Now, why is he called Maharaj Parikshit? Because he actually saw Krishna in the womb. And therefore, but he was told that he would not see Krishna again until, he leaves his body. So, therefore, he became Parikshit. He was always, which means he's always looking for Krishna. So that is the position of a devotee. A devotee is always searching for Krishna and anticipating seeing Krishna. But he doesn't, even though he doesn't see Krishna, he's very, enthusiastic to see Krishna and to remember him and always be engaged in his service. And the only way to assuage or mitigate the pain of separation is by engaging in devotional service and also enacting the pastimes of Krishna, or remembering them. So in this way, Parikshit was called the examiner. He was always examining to see if he could, in order to see Krishna. So he's described as the descendant of Puru. Now, Maharaj Puru was the youngest son of Maharaj Yayati, and he was Maharaj Yayati was cursed by Sukracharya in his youth to become old right away, and so he could not enjoy sex life. And there's a big story behind that. I won't tell it right now. So then, but he was given one benediction by Sukracharya after Yayati supplicated him. He said, "Please, don't do this to me. I'm a young man. I want to enjoy sex life." So Sukracharya said, "If you can exchange your old age with the youth of someone, then you can enjoy." So Yayati asked each one of his 5 sons, and the first 4 refused. Only the 5th son, Puru, accepted his old age and bequeathed to him his young age. And then Puru was able to enjoy sense gratification for 1,000 years. After 1,000 years of enjoying sense gratification, he realized he was wasting his time and he should get serious about spiritual life. And so he gave back his youth to his youngest son, Puru, and he accepted his old age, and then he engaged completely in Krishna consciousness after that. So we see that this sense gratification, someone who becomes a little bit sober understands it's actually a waste of time, and it just diverts someone from spiritual life. Therefore, if we learn that at a young age, we will not waste most of our life. And that's why in the Vedic system, there is at 5 years old and up, a boy should become a brahmachari and be trained in controlling the mind and the senses by being engaged always in devotional service and being completely surrendered to a bona fide spiritual master or spiritual masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus, and following their advice. And if a young boy engages in tapasya, not as severely, let's say, as a sannyasi, but learning to be always a servant of the bona fide spiritual master and masters, and always engaging in acts of devotion, not trying to accumulate money. The brahmachari gives everything to the guru, and the guru supplies minimal needs or fundamental needs, so that the brahmachari lives a life of lives at least his formative years up to 25 years old, where he should get married, in a life of minimalist living, having the minimum of things, but maximizing his engagement in devotional service and his understanding of the Vedic literature like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. This was the traditional system. Now, if if a boy decided that he would like to get married, then he would be also trained in some way to make money legally. And there are 4 positions. He could become a brahmana, he could become a kshatriya, he could become a vaishya, or he could become a sudra. It depends on his qualities. So the Vedic system was very scientific. It was meant specifically to help everyone in society, even the people who are not in the Varna ashrama system, to make spiritual advancement. But it's recommended to be in the Varna ashrama system because the system is specifically made to help everyone cooperate and make spiritual advancement and go back to Godhead within this lifetime. So the story of Puru is very interesting, and it has a lot of deep meaning to it because he was the only son that was ready to sacrifice everything for his father, and he became the descendant or the ancestor of the Kuru dynasty. Okay, so also there's another point I want to make. In this purport it says that this incident is the direct proof that the body and the living entity, the spiritual spark, are different. Now that's a very significant statement. This is the main confusion of most people in this world, that they do not see how the body is different than the soul. And because of that, they're completely in illusion their whole life, trying to serve the dictates of the body, which is dictated by lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and all these negative things. So when one is dictated to by lust, one wastes their whole life in sense gratification. And this is the great tragedy of modern civilization. It promotes lusty behavior. It promotes greed. It promotes anger, where people, when they feel frustrated, they get very angry and they want to retaliate or take vengeance. So this is going on all the time, and it's basically due to becoming confused about who one is, rather than identifying with the soul and understanding one has an eternal soul. People are convinced that there's no soul and I'm just this body. So there was a British philosopher and so-called scientist called Francis Bacon, who lived in the 16th century. And he's generally acknowledged as the founder or father of modern science in England. And he was known as the person who established the scientific method of research. And he believed also that science could give mankind mastery over nature, and this would improve the life of everyone on the earth. So you see, he's one of the, although in some ways he was a good man, but he was actually promoting a demoniac culture that has become the norm today and has put many people in illusion. And for Bacon, or that's its name, last name, science was not simply an intellectual or academic undertaking, but a utilitarian one. So utilitarian is a big word, and it means that it can make your life better. And it's very, let's say, organized way of trying to control nature. Now, what does Prabhupada say about this? Well, he says, this is a mistake. on the part of Bacon or any other scientist to think that science can control nature. It's not possible. Krishna says, Devi esa gunamai mama maya durateya mam evaye prapadyante mayametam tarantite, 7th chapter, 14th verse. Basically, that verse says that it is impossible to control nature because nature is controlled by Krishna. It's his energy. But it becomes possible if one surrenders to Krishna. And one does not try to control nature for exploitation, as the scientists are trying to do today and people are trying to do today. But one can control one's own nature, meaning the negative qualities of lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and all these things. However, one can control oneself, not control other people or not try and control nature. And by that self-control, be engaged always in the service of Krishna. Then it becomes easy to overcome nature. Although, if one doesn't do that, it's impossible to overcome nature. So, nature means the laws of nature, right? Birth, death, old age, and disease, influenced by the three modes of material nature, perceiving time as past, present, and future, whereas in the spiritual world, it's the eternal future. So there's so many things that limit people in the material world, and therefore it's impossible for them to overcome or control nature. But it is possible to control nature within oneself by identifying with the soul and engaging in the activity of the soul, which is devotional service. So Prabhupada says, it is not possible to control birth, old age, disease, and death. During our lifetime, we may be able to make some changes and give some facilities, but that is not the ultimate end. So then Prabhupada the devotee starts speaking more about Bacon to get Prabhupada's opinion. And he says, the devotee says, Hayagriva Das says, Bacon disliked mental speculation about God because we cannot expect God to conform to our own conception. Due to God's infinitude, no conception of God can be unbelievable. By and large, Bacon relegated theology to the realm of faith and science to the realm of knowledge of the world. So we can see in the 16th century, everyone was still talking about God. And they were trying to now, with the let's say the birth of modern science, they were trying to adjust science with religion. They were not saying they're two different things. And so some of the things that Bacon said is very good. It's acceptable to us. But other things are wrong. So when he says, by and large, Bacon relegated theology to the realm of faith and science to the realm of knowledge of the world. Well, see, that's a false statement. That's a speculation right there. Anyway, Prabhupada says, it is good to be a master architect and make a house with all modern facilities. But if these facilities cause us to forget life's real aim, we have lost a great deal. It is better to remain without facilities, evacuate in the field. I mean, instead of having toilets and sewers and all these things, better just go out in the field like they were doing in India up until recently. There's still people who do that, and evacuate in a park or evacuate on the land. So when I first went to India, one day when I was in Mayapur, I wanted to go to the Ganges, so I started walking across this field, and I didn't know that the villagers would set aside a particular field for passing stool and urine. I didn't know that. So I'm walking through this field, and there's human stool and urine everywhere, and I'm thinking to myself, how did this happen? Well, that was the system in a village. They would designate one area where everyone would pass stool and urine. And because of the hot sun in India, it purifies it very quickly, and it turns it into basically compost. However, I I think it was somewhat of a rainy season when I was there. So I accidentally ended up in this place where it was all stool and urine. And later on I found out you shouldn't walk across that park, that field. So Prabhupada says, it is better to remain without facilities. In other words, he's saying, look, you're going to do this science, but what usually happens when people engage in science is they get puffed up. And they learn how to do these things like make real big houses and cars and bridges and rockets and bombs and all these things. And they get puffed up. And he says, but if these facilities cause us to forget life's real aim, which is exactly what's happening with modern science today, we have lost a great deal. It is better to remain without facilities, evacuate in the field, and bathe in the river than overly concern ourselves with the modern amenities, facilities for a pampered life. If we forget ourselves, if we forget our real business, how to revive God consciousness, we have not advanced but regressed. And that's exactly what has happened today. People have regressed. They've gone backwards, not forwards, spiritually. And they've created a big hoax that science will solve all the problems of life. It's not a fact. Science seems to make certain things easier, like when you have a washing machine and a dryer. Well, that saves a lot of time and effort, right? It was a hard thing to wash everything by hands and sun dry it. And then what are you going to do in winter when there's very little sun? You see, so, but there are alternatives. They didn't have these high-powered washing machines and dryers before, but they had other means of doing it, of drying. There are certain types of simple hand machines that can quickly wash clothing and then dry it. So they had special rooms for drying things where there was a stove and with a chimney, and they could dry things very quickly in there. So there are other alternatives, let's put it like that, to washing machines and dryers and cars and all these different amenities that people think are absolutely necessary for life. People didn't live with these things for millions of years, but still they existed. It's only in the last 100 years that these things have become prominent. Okay, so then the devotee says, Bacon did not conceive of science as being a disunifying factor as far as religion or God is concerned. Rather, he believed that science could enable civilization to progress. It could be a binding force between man and God. Well, that theoretically sounds wonderful. Let's see what Prabhupada says. That is certainly a very good idea, but many modern scientists are denying the existence of God. Many are claiming that God is dead, that there is no need of God, or that we can manufacture God and man in our own way. That's exactly true. That's exactly the dilemma that we're in today. Then the devotee says, Bacon considered some knowledge to be supernatural, in that it comes from God, whereas other forms of knowledge are attained through man's own attempts. He admits that the material senses are imperfect and act like false mirrors, which distort the actual world. Thus, men are constantly being deceived. Well, you see, Bacon was a smart man. You know, you can't say he was dumb. He's smarter than Einstein, smarter than a lot of other people. But he also made mistakes. Right? So let's see what Prabhupada says. Yes, although they are advancing the cause of material science, they are forgetting God in the process. This is most degrading. Men should prove by scientific methods that God exists and is doing everything. So this is the basis of why Prabhupada started the Bhakti Vedanta science project, the Bhaktivedanta Institute. It's to have scientists show proof of the existence of God and explain how God is the supreme scientist. So this is going into the theme of what our Ananda Mela festival is going to be this year, where we're going to actually show the real purpose, the real purpose that science should follow, rather than the junk purpose that they're following now. They're trying to deny God. They're trying to emulate God. They're trying to eliminate God in our life by saying everything that God was purported to do, we are doing through science. You know, we can fly through the air. We can fly. We can go in submarines under the sea. We can do this. We can do that. And so we don't really need God. And we will create the God particle. That's what they have. Their super accelerator on the French-Swiss border, and look that up. It's called a cyclotron, where they claim that in 2012 they created the God particle. What is the God particle? That is changing energy into matter. They call that. They said that's what God is. It was purported to do, but now we can do it with the cyclotron. What's it say? Okay, wait, microphone. Read it in microphone. It's a particle accelerator.
A particle accelerator is a machine that uses electromagnetic fields to propel charged particles to very high speeds and energies and to contain them in well-defined beams.
Well-defined what?
Beams. B-E-A-M-S. Beams.
B-E?
A-M-S. Beams, as in a beam.
Oh, beams. Beams. Okay. I thought you said beings.
Yeah, beams. Well-defined beams.
That's it.
Large accelerators are used for fundamental research in particle physics. The largest accelerator currently operating in the Large Hadron Collider, LHC, near Geneva, Switzerland, operated by CERN.
Yeah, so this cost billions of dollars to build that thing.
Yeah.
And they haven't proved anything. They claim that they were able to change some energy into matter. But if they did that, why don't they continue doing it? They didn't really do that. They're just bluffing. And so they spend these billions and billions of dollars hiring hundreds, sometimes thousands of scientists for these projects that lead to nothing. They have another project in southern France that this Hadron accelerator is on the French-Swiss border, right on the border. But in southern France, there's another project like this. In other words, a waste of huge amount of money, and now they have 35 countries supporting it financially, costing billions and billions of dollars. They want to replicate fusion energy, which they think is the cause of the sun's energy. And they claim that by 2230 or 2250, they will succeed and produce the sun's electromagnetic whatever energy, and make energy free, right? So look that up. It's a project in southern France they're building what you call a fusion type of machine that replicates what they think is the cause of the sun's energy. They're spending billions and billions of dollars doing these things, and they're not going to get any results from it, neither from the very, very expensive Hadron accelerator on the French-Swiss border, and this other crazy idea of, the sun's energy is coming from Brahmajyoti. It's not coming from the fusion of atoms. So there's two things they're doing. The cyclotron, it breaks atoms, and the machine in southern France is supposed to fuse atoms together. So what does it say?
So it's called, the project is called ITER, International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor.
Okay, thermonuclear accelerated
Experimental reactor.
experimental reactor, right. Speak closer, put the microphone closer to your
Yeah. Is an international nuclear fusion research and engineering mega project.
No, read louder and slower. Go ahead, start all over again.
ITER is an international nuclear fusion research and engineering mega project aimed at replicating the fusion processes of the sun to create energy on the earth.
This is crazy people. Right, go ahead.
Upon completion of construction of the main reactor and first plasma planned for late 2025, it will be the world's largest magnetic confinement plasma physics experiment and the largest experimental tokamak nuclear fusion reactor. It is being built next to Cadarache facility in southern France.
Yeah, this is all la land, you know, it's all nonsense. And they're spending billions and billions of dollars. They have hundreds, maybe thousands of scientists. 35 countries are giving the money for this wasteful endeavor. They're not going to succeed. Just like they haven't succeeded with the accelerator either in the French-Swiss border. Go ahead.
So it started in 2013. It's going on from last 8 years.
Yeah.
So the long-term goal of fusion research is to generate electricity. ITER's stated purpose is scientific research and technological demonstration of a large fusion reactor without electricity generation.
Without what?
Without electricity generation.
So it creates its own energy. It doesn't get any energy from the outside. That's why they want to do it. It's self-creating energy.
ITER's goals are to achieve enough fusion to produce 10 times as much thermal output power as thermal power absorbed by the plasma for short time periods. To demonstrate and test technologies that would be needed to operate a fusion power plant, including cryogenics, heating, control and diagnostics systems and remote maintenance, to achieve and learn from a burning plasma, to test tritium breeding and to demonstrate the safety of a fusion plant.
Okay, so it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. So Francis Bacon is the father of all this nonsense because he established a scientific method. So what's the scientific method? We should understand what this is. It's systematic observation, measurement, and experiment, and formulation, testing, and modification, and eventually having a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a theory that's supposed to lead to predictability. So anyway, there are 7 steps to the scientific method. The first step is asking a question. Can we reproduce the energy of the sun here on Earth, right? So the second point is perform research. Try and figure out what is causing that energy. So they think it's fusion. There's two things. An atomic bomb is explosion, right? So you're breaking atoms and it's releasing energy. But then there's fusion that's connecting atoms, and they think that is a greater source of energy than the explosion energy. Everything now is explosion. Your carburetor in a car produces an explosion that makes the wheels turn, right? So that everything we're doing now is mostly based on explosion technology. Now they want to research fusion technology, which they think is more powerful, but that's not the cause of the sunlight and heat. But see, it's basically a bridge to nowhere. That means you build a bridge, but when you cross it, it leads to nowhere, right? So, but see, this is their trick now to get money for science, to have projects that take 30 years or 40 years, and at the end they'll say, well, we're not going to do this. It's a better technology, and then they start another one. You see, so they built their super, cyclotron in the French border with Switzerland. Now they started this other project recently. The cyclotron they started back in the 90s. Now this one they started in 2013. So this is their trick, to keep getting money to do all their speculative projects. See? And it's always in the future, right? It's a post-dated check. If Microsoft gives you a post-dated check instead of cash, what would you accept that? In other words, they say, well, you can get this $10 million in 2050. Well, is that real, or is it cheating? It's cheating. It's nonsense. You would not accept a post-dated check. So let's read a little bit more. So Bacon is like the father of the scientific method. And this is what they teach kids. This is what they teach people. You go to college to learn the scientific method and follow it. And say. So what is the spiritual method? What is the Vedic method? The Vedic method is based on what you would call, this method is inductive method, scientific method. But the Vedic method is deductive. Okay, what's the difference between inductive and deductive? Inductive method is the scientific method that Bacon is talking about. It's based on observation. But our senses are imperfect, so no matter how much observation we make, we're going to still make mistakes, and it's never going to be perfect. Deductive, there's two types of deduction. There's spiritual deduction and there's mundane deduction. Spiritual deduction means you start with the a priori truths of the Vedas and you deduct from that point. Like, for example, when in 1968 or 69, the United States had this filming of landing on the moon. And I saw it, and I actually thought, they landed on the moon. Everybody thought, because they had the television, right? But there was a little small print on the television that said, simulated landing. You know what that means, simulated? You know what that means? What's it mean? Real. Huh? It's not real. It's like a Hollywood movie, right? So they showed a simulated landing on the moon, right? And but everyone thought they actually landed on the moon. The only person that said they didn't land on the moon was Srila Prabhupada. He said, that's not the moon, because there's a description of the moon in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a heavenly planet. And they're saying there's only dust, So he said they didn't go to the moon. And he gave 5 or 6 reasons why. Not just one reason. And there were some devotees that left ISKCON at that point because they thought Prabhupada is nonsense, because we saw it with our own eyes. You see how there's always tests. Krishna's always going to test us whether we actually have faith or not. Right? And there were some devotees that left. They thought that Prabhupada was nonsense. That how could he deny what the scientists are saying? And they're showing it on the television, right? So, one time I was on a morning walk with Prabhupada, and this was in Paris, and he was lampooning the scientists. That means he was blaspheming them. And I had, graduated college, and I was involved with science and mathematics and things like that. And I was shocked. I had never heard anyone criticize the scientists. And, I said to Prabhupada, I said, I've never heard anyone speak like you. criticizing the scientists, calling them rascals and nonsense. I said, this is unbelievable. And he says, yes. He said, I can do this. He said, do you know why? And I was shocked when he said that. I said, no. He said, because, and he pointed his finger at me. He pointed his finger like this. And he said, because I know that Krishna exists. I know this. I know this. I know this. Therefore I can do it. And that really, it completely stunned me, the way he said it. He was real serious. And he was right. He's the only one that can stand up to them and reveal their nonsense. See? And he's doing it now in this book. This book, ISKCON doesn't actually promote this book. It's the same, because this is a fantastic book. If you want to know Krishna consciousness and see through all the sophistry, all the lying and misrepresentation of modern science and modern education. So, Prabhupada says, men should prove by scientific methods that God exists and is doing everything. Scientists should use a scientific method to understand how the Supreme Intelligent Being is working. God's scientific knowledge is perfect, and knowledge that complies with this is very good. But if men have a little knowledge and defy the existence of God, their knowledge is useless. So their little knowledge has become a dangerous thing. Now, let's hear what Hayagriva says. He says, Bacon says something very much like what you just said, Prabhupada. He writes, it is true that a little philosophy inclineth man's mind to atheism, but depth of philosophy bringeth men's minds about to religion. So he's using high English from the 16th century, but you can it's still English, so you can understand. So if we would translate this into our modern language of English, it would say, it is true that a little philosophy conditions or limits a man's mind to become an atheist. But profound understanding of philosophy will bring men's minds to become religious and very serious about spiritual life. So that would be a translation of what he just said, where he said, it is true that a little philosophy inclineth man's mind to atheism, but depth in philosophy bringeth men's minds about to religion. So this is exactly what Prabhupada is saying. So we see that Bacon was a very smart guy, but he made a lot of mistakes also, and he's the father of this nonsense scientific method. But Prabhupada's saying you can use that scientific method to prove that God exists. God's scientific knowledge is perfect in knowledge, and knowledge that complies with this is very good. But if men have a little knowledge and defy the existence of God, their knowledge is useless. So their little knowledge has become a dangerous thing. And that's exactly the fact today. Okay, well, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So it's not a question, but it's kind of my observation, interacting with so many friends. So as a human being, we are part and parcel of Krishna, and as we have some kind of ability, or kind of we are inquisitive, we have some desires for creation. Like it's just like Krishna has creation. Since we have that inherited some of those qualities, maybe like, but very like less in terms of quantification. So everybody wants to create something. Everybody has inquisitive mind and curiosity about it. So that leads to creation of all those experiments, new modern, you can call it as modern science. You're researching and creating some, like, let's say television or phone or something like that. But when you go into, if a pure devotee or spirituality, as Prabhupada was mentioning, we don't need toilets, we don't need this, we don't need that. But so that is the actual.
People live like that for millions of years.
Yes.
It's only in the last 150 years that they've taken advantage.
So that is exactly the point of friction between a person who thinks that, okay, then what is the use of our intellectual things, and because that has an inbuilt or inherent quality of person to create something. If we that leads to
No,
not
wait a
create
minute, wait a
anything.
minute. The answer is very simple. You have telephone in you right now. You just haven't explored it and developed it.
Yeah.
Sanjay has an internal television. He's seeing things that are hundreds of miles away and hearing what's going on without all that technology, without all the wires or the electromagnetic waves or whatever. You see, you don't realize what potential you have as a human being. And because you're overwhelmed by this, all this emphasis on the material scientific research, you think that that is a viable way of life. It is not. It ruins the whole fiber of spirituality in a human being. But yet, you don't realize what you're capable of doing and what you're capable of being. Everything is already within you. Paramatma is in your heart. Krishna is in your heart. He's the source of all knowledge. If you purify yourself, then you will have access to that transcendental knowledge and ability to do incredible things. Narada Muni flies through the air. He doesn't need an airplane. Doesn't need a rocket. He flies through the air. You understand?
Yeah.
You don't realize what the possibilities that are available to you if you stop being so, let's say, fooled by modern education and modern science and modern so-called amenities, and develop the inherent properties or qualities that you have as a human being. Human being is part and parcel of Krishna. That's who you actually are. It's not the body, it's your soul that's part and parcel of Krishna. And your soul is eternal. It cannot be killed, it cannot be burned, it cannot be dried, it cannot be in any way wasted. And it has incredible properties, qualities. You have to develop them by a life of what you would say tapasya. But the tapasya was made very easy by Lord Chaitanya. Chanting, dancing, feasting, hearing Vedic knowledge, and living a very simple life, growing your own food, caring for cows, and living in simple house. Now, what happens when you live like that? Well, this bad weather goes away, and God starts to. Krishna's in charge of the weather, right? He's in charge of all the devas. All of a sudden, the devas will cooperate with you, and you'll be able to have conditions in which you wear a dhoti. It's made out of khadi, that you grow your own cotton, and then you make khadi, and you make khadi clothes. Now you can wash your dhoti and your kurta, and when there's sun, you can dry it in a matter of less than an hour, and you can bathe in the river, and you can sleep on the floor. All of a sudden, your life becomes completely different because the devas are cooperating with you. Why? Because you became God conscious. So everything would change if people became God conscious. That's what I'm telling you. Yeah. And that's what happened when King Yudhisthira was the king, and when Lord Rama was the king, and when Parikshit was the king. Everything became easy for the people. Because there was a cooperation. And this is explained in Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter, verse number 10. Let's see what that says. It says, see, everything is in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, Sahayagya praja sristva puruvacha prajapati anena prasavistyadvam esavos srista kamaduk. This says, In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures, meaning Lord Brahma, sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna," sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. This is 3rd chapter, 10th verse. Now in the purport, Prabhupada says, the Prajapati, the father of all living entities, is Lord Vishnu, and he is the Lord of all living creatures, all worlds and all beauties, and the protector of everyone. The Lord created this material world to enable the conditioned souls to learn how to perform yajnas, sacrifices, for the satisfaction of Vishnu, so that while in the material world they can live very comfortably without anxiety, and after finishing the present material body, they can enter into the kingdom of God. That is the whole program for the conditioned soul. By performance of yajna, the conditioned souls gradually become Krishna conscious and become godly in all respects. In the age of Kali, the Sankirtan yajna, the chanting of the names of God, is recommended by the Vedic literature, scriptures, and this transcendental system was introduced by Lord Chaitanya for the deliverance of all men in this age. Sankirtan yajna and Krishna consciousness go well together. Lord Krishna in his devotional form as Lord Chaitanya is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32 as follows, with the special reference to the Sankirtan yajna. Krishna Varnyam Chisak Krishna Sankapangastra Parsadam Yajnai Sankirtana Parar Yachanti Sumedasaha. In this age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates, by performance of Sankirtan yajna. Other yajnas prescribed in the Vedic literatures are not easy to perform in this age of Kali, but the Sankirtan yajna is easy and sublime for all purposes, as recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. So the next verse says, the demigods being pleased by sacrifices, meaning in Kali Yuga it's Sankirtan. In Dwapara Yuga it was very, very opulent deity worship. In Treta Yuga it was gigantic sacrifices, fire sacrifices, that required a huge amount of money to perform. And in Satya Yuga, it was meditation, because people could live 100,000 years. They meditated for 60,000 years at least, right? So, the demigods being pleased by sacrifices will please you, and thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. There it is. Prosperity will reign for all. So, as soon as we become free of sinful activity, the demigods, ordered by Krishna, will change the whole atmosphere, the whole, let's say, climate, to be cooperative, to help the living entities live a simple life, where you don't need washing machines, we don't need dryers, you don't need this, you don't need that. You see, it's because people are sinful that you need all these things, and it's all artificial. Okay, we can talk about this some more. But you see, everything is right there in the Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th verses. You read it, you'll see. Solution to all problems. Give up all sins. Live a Krishna conscious life. You'll see. The devas will cooperate at that point, ordered by Krishna. And then you'll have paradise on earth. Haribol. Okay, we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Don't be fooled by the modern scientists. You know, all this stuff is junk. You need washing machines, you need dryers, you need Teslas, you need this, you need that. You don't need any of that junk. You know, there was a huge earthquake in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
A lot of people died. That means there was a big demon born. Remember, it said that whenever a demon is born, there's cataclysmic events that take place, like hurricanes and earthquakes and so forth. And these things are happening not because nature, by accident in nature. It's specifically because a demon is born. That's why the weather becomes very, very unpredictable. Yeah, we read that. You might not have been in a class when we read. I'll show you where it said. Haribol, go ahead.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bando Moi Savadana Mate
Bando Mui Sabadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Vai Ebava Toriya Jai
Janara Prasima He Bhagatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Ja Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asha
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Shri Guru Charana Padma
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिला जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिला जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अतन जनर बंध
वेद गाय जहर चरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना हा हा Mahaprabhu koro doya deho more padachaya.
Mahaprabhu koro doya deho more padachaya.
Ibijas Gaushik Tribhuvana. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana.
Prabhupada Patita Pavana.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine.
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva.
Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol.
Jayo Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Pararajagachas, the Tarasatarishi, Shishimad is divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Antakoti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur. Prem Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Dvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Jamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to Samadhi, all glories to Samadhi, all glories to Samadhi, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Buddhaya Krishna Vasudaya Pujaya Srimati
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is a perfection to his that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and Master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame has spread all of the three worlds.